somewhere. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the meeting of the Executive Committee. Today, the 25th of January. Everyone's welcome, particularly two members of the public who I know well, so welcome. I now have to do various parts of administration around emergency evacuation. The emergency evacuation announcement, please pay attention, thank you. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please leave the building in an orderly fashion through the nearest fire exit. Please use the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance of the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please switch off mobile phones or turn them to silent. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed. Please ensure that your microphone members is switched on when speaking and speak clearly into the microphone. Members of the public are present and I have to ask you about this. Members of the public and press, whilst you are, of course, entitled to film or take photographs during this meeting, can I please emphasize to you that this should be done without disruption to the meeting and can only be done from a designated area in the public seating. Can I please therefore ask you to raise your hand clearly in the air if you wish to take photographs or film this evening? No. Thank you very much. Item 1 is apologies for absence. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Mrs. Vilma Wilson. Non-members attending, there are none. The minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of December 2023, that should be. Members, I assume you've taken a look at the minutes. Can I sign them as a true and appropriate record of the meeting, or are there matters you wish to raise? No. No? Agreed. In which case, if agreed, then I will sign those at the appropriate moment. Item 4, to receive declarations of interest. Are any? Thank you. There are none. There is one. Arthur.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 7, voluntary sector grants. I have an interest as I'm a trustee of RAVS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Reeves.
As Councillor Williams has actually pointed that out, I think I should declare an interest in that my wife actually receives a grant on behalf of her adoption support group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. These will be noted in the minutes. Thank you. Okay, item 5, questions on notice from councillors. There are none. Okay, item 6, and it's the first with a report, and it's the One Team Health and Safety Policy. As Councillor Mrs. Wilson is not here, being unwell, I'm going to ask Phoebe Barnes, Director of Assets and Investments, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, in front of you tonight is the One Team Health and Safety Policy. This policy has been refreshed under the strategic partnership across Watford and Brentwood and applies to our duty as a council to our staff, but also it does note duties that are applied to councillors as well. This policy then will lead into how we set out our strategy and our action plans going forward. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? Councillor Mr Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question on this. I note on the report that the policy is due its next review April 2024. Seems quite a short time period. Would that be usual, or would it just be an annual review? Thanks.
It would just be an annual review. We started the work on this during last summer, and it's just, this is the time it's been able to come to the executive. But what we would be doing is we would just be reviewing it internally as an annual review, and then any material changes we would bring back for councillors to endorse again.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley, you indicated you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to know whether it's the council's responsibility for the health and welfare and safety of its partners. That's not only the councillors that actually are working for the council, but outside contractors. Thank you.
Phoebe?
Outside contractors have their own duty under their health and safety. If they're a contractor, obviously we would risk assess any works being done on our own council assets, properties, and vice versa on our own premises and in members of the public, but a contractor would have their own duty under the Health and Safety Act as well.
Are you happy with that?
I would just like to know whether we as a council do inspect their, if you like, their health and safety certification, please.
So on page 6.22, it does reference to procurement and contractors and the partners to the council. So it does make reference that contractor partners work on behalf of the council will commit to this policy or demonstrate an equal or greater commitment to health and safety and wellbeing in their own policies and arrangements. And we would check that, and as part of our risk assessment, we would ask for any documentation that to be seen before any works was carried out as well.
Councillor Stanley, happy with that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? None. We have, I think, one recommendation. I'll read it and then I'll ask for a proposer and seconder. The recommendation noted are: 1, it's for members to endorse the draft One Team Health and Safety and Wellbeing Policy, which is attached to this report at Appendix 1. Do we have a proposer, please, and seconder?
I'll propose it.
Proposed by Councillor Mr Newport, seconded by Councillor Stanley. Can I take a show of hands, please, for those in favour of the recommendation? Okay, is that unanimous?
Yeah.
It is. Thank you. Thank you very much. We now move to item 7, which is the voluntary sector grants allocation decision for 24-25. Councillor Julie Gooding is here. We have Kim Anderson on behalf of communities. If I may, Councillor Gooding, I'll ask Kim Anderson to speak first and ask you if there's anything you wish to add. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Chair. So the report before members is to agree the £25,000 allocation out of the 24-25 budget, which supports the CVS and voluntary sector organisations in the district, and specifically to continue to run the £10,000 grants process for local organisations and projects. So the agreement by the executive will allow the grants process to be released, and the council would look to run this for 4 weeks during the month of February. The process also allows the council to top slice £15,000, which supports RAVs. And the idea is with the lead member to establish a cross-party panel that will actually score the applications that are submitted as part of this process. And these organisations should demonstrate how they support the Rochford District Council business plan and also the health and wellbeing strategy priorities. A decision paper will then come back to the executive group. I think in the report it says April, but because of pre-election considerations, it will probably be June, I think. That will include the results of the grants process for 24-25 and the funding allocation to those organisations. It will also provide an update on the new Essex voluntary sector infrastructure model. So waiting for the outcome of that. And also I believe that it provides an annual update from RAVS on the work that they've done in the previous year. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Before I ask the questions, Councillor Gooding, do you wish to draw attention to anything from members? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to say that the voluntary sector grant gives invaluable support, and without this, we would lose a lot of goodwill in the community. Many groups rely on the grants and donations in the district. I've contacted some of the recipients from the previous allocation to gain their feedback on voluntary sector funding, what difference it's made to them. Am I able to just give you a quick flavour of that?
Of course.
Yep. Okay. So,
Thank you.
So Bar on Bus, they're a local youth group. They provided volunteers with training for the year. So instead of working ad hoc, they've actually got a planned programme for youth work to be put into the community by volunteers, which is they're a great organisation. And Send the Right Message is for a disabled community, and they are financially struggling. People in the community have struggled with the cost of living. They've given out fuel vouchers, winter coat vouchers and shopping support. And East Essex Hackspace is a 3D printer that they got with their funding. And this is multi-material printer, which enables medical grade materials for use in prosthetics. And they've been able to print pill bottle openers for people with arthritis. They work very closely with REMAP, which is a charitable organisation for people with disabilities, that they wouldn't get this equipment on the NHS. So it is bespoke items. You know, I could go on and on because TrustLinks also, they've got a smart board on order that they are working with people with disabilities as well. I won't take up any more of your time, but only to say that the work that they do is fantastic with just a small amount of money. So I would recommend certainly recommendation 1 to get this grant out and to ensure that we can do that in the 4 weeks in February. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. Thank you so much for the small picture of how things have been going well for the organisations we've supported. And obviously, we look forward to a more formal presentation of that in June. But nevertheless, thank you so much. Members, I'm going to ask you at this point to indicate whether you want to ask any questions. I have Councillor Eaves right in front of me. Can you put your hands a little bit higher, please? That's good, because otherwise I'm not sure whether you're trying to play patty cake with me or we're indicating. So, Councillor Eaves, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to recommendation 2, how much risk is there around that? Because obviously we're looking to okay the grant allocation tonight, but there is a good deal of uncertainty as to how this is actually going to go ahead. It does seem as though Essex might be giving us a little bit of a headache here.
I can respond to that. We're at the moment with Essex County Council and their infrastructure. I think the first 12 months is going to be business as usual while they do a transition into whatever that new structure looks like. I think when you're looking at local organisations such as RAVS, I think there's still a place for them. It's just how monies are allocated out. So whether Essex just want one contract with an organisation and then that's subcontracted out to the various CVSs that sit across Essex, we don't know that yet. So again, there is an element of risk, but we are waiting on Essex and what we want to do from a local authority perspective to minimise that risk to our local organisations that support our residents.
Could I just interject there and say, obviously, you're in very close touch with what's going on at Essex. And if there is any increased or perceived risk, then will you please let me know and let Julie Gooding know in particular so that we can arrange for us an intervention. Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two questions, really. One is there a top limit that the grant is accessible to those that are asking for the grant? And two is, does it make any difference to that grant if they are within their getting grants from other directions? Thank you.
I will double check the grant process here because it's probably slightly different from what I'm used to in Brentwood. I think the majority applications are usually for up to £1,000. And again, they may ask for £1,000, but they may only be awarded £500. So I think there's probably a question back to those organisations, say, with £500, say, are you still able to deliver some of the what you want out of that grant application? So I think we'd always have that discussion with those organisations to make sure that they are able to deliver that, or if they say, no, we can't, then that goes back into the pot to be reallocated.
Councillor Gooding.
Yeah, just to add to what Kim has already alluded to, when we as a cross-panel party of members are making the decision for how much, they do need to meet the criteria of the Health and Wellbeing Board. And so if they haven't demonstrated enough within their application, then we as a cross-party member may reduce that amount if we don't feel they've met the criteria, which ultimately then stretches it out to some extra people. So through their own fault for not explaining it very well, maybe not meeting the criteria, we end up getting more people covered with the £500 as opposed to the £1,000.
Thank you. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to come back to recommendation 2, if I may, Kim, where you said that we might not be able to meet that April 2024 date and it might need to be pushed back further.
I think that's just purely because of pre-election considerations. So,
and that's absolutely fine. But I sorry, and I just wanted to ask Emily on that, on whether we should make an amendment to that recommendation because we're moving to a committee system, and whether that should then be pushed into a committee, because obviously we won't have an executive post May elections, or whether or not we should be taking this decision before the elections. And is that feasible that we could do it at the net during that period? Or is that, sorry, is that clear? Yeah, thank you.
It's clear enough to me. I understand what you're saying. I'm sure Emily, you all knows equally. Emily, please.
Thank you, Chair. So there are two parts to that question. The first part is around the ability to take a decision during the pre-election moratorium on the award of the voluntary sector grants. And actually that could continue to go ahead during the pre-election period. The issue is that the council can't then do any publicity around it. So the pre-election period doesn't stop you from taking decisions, it just stops you from talking about them. The second part is absolutely right. So from May 2024, from the annual council meeting, the executive will no longer be part of the council's governance structure. So if the decision is put back into the new municipal year, it will need to go to the relevant committee.
Yes, Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Emily, for that. My view would be personally to keep to that April deadline if we can, regardless of publicity. These grants are obviously important and we don't really want to stall the process at all, I think. So That would be my view. Thank you.
Councillor, Mr Newport, are you proposing an amendment to R2?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stanley, you indicated.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My second question was on the grant situation. Would that have any bearing as to other grants that company or those people that are asking for the grants, would that have any bearing on our grant to them?
I think what we would do within the application process is to ask them what other grants they've received. And again, the timelines on that. So have those grants been approved, or are they just in the process of getting those agreed or not? I think that's all we can do as part of the application process.
Okay, sorry, should have looked up a little quicker. Looking down, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I just would like a bit of clarification after what's been spoken about. To my mind, we either vote for R1 or for R2. R1 begins to continue to run the 10K grant process. R2 starts to change the current process. So I'd like clarification if we are voting for 1 or 2, or they can actually both exist together, because the way they're written in my head, they don't exist together.
I think that's probably a slight error in the report. What I would say is R1 is to continue that grant process. That's not changed. I think there was a delay last year and it didn't go out till later. So I think the idea is that it comes back and we get those grants awarded as quickly as possible. So sorry for the confusion in the report.
So sorry, Chairman, may I just say for clarity, that means R1 then runs into R2 effectively. Is that correct?
Yeah. So R1 and R2 exist together. I'm going to take Mr. Summers to speak. Sorry, Julie, I'm going to.
Thank you, Chair.
Because he'd like to
I think,
advise us.
sorry, yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think the wording is that the current process in R2 is that it would have come back later in the year, possibly June or July, for the actual results of the cross-working party. So what we're suggesting is that actually comes back a lot earlier than it would have done previously, and that's the change of the process.
Councillor Gooding.
So do we need to change this recommendation to, because at the moment it doesn't read that at all?
I'm with you. Please, if there's an amendment that needs to be put forward, will someone please make it? Councillor Newport.
So in light of that, I think R2 just needs to be amended to continue the current process. I think that would resolve that issue, just changing that word. Would that be acceptable?
If that's an amendment, it needs a seconder. Councillor Gooding. In which case, as there's an amendment, before we take R1, R2 and R3, I will be asking you to, we've got a proposer and seconder. I now will put that amendment to the vote. So those of you in favour of the change to continue the current process, etc., etc., will you please indicate now in favour? That's taken. Thank you. Any further questions, members? If there are none, I will ask you whether you're happy to take R1, R2, R3 together, or would you like to vote on them separately? Together. Okay. Then I will read them out. I will need proposer and seconder for the 3 recommendations, please. I've got councillor Gooding and councillor Williams, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't want to second it? Okay, well, just hold on. Councillor Stanley is seconding. Right, you've got a question, that's fine. Thank you, councillor Williams.
Thank you. As a trustee of RAVs, should I vote on this or shall I abstain? My choice, I presume. Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'm happy to answer that in a very vague way, I'm afraid, councillor. It is your personal choice to determine whether or not you have an interest that prohibits you from
Okay,
voting. But I would always say, if in doubt, it's best to not vote.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Emily. Right, I'm going to read the recommendations at this point before we take a vote on all three at the same time, okay, or concurrently. R1, to continue to run the 10K grants process for local organisations and projects. Agreement of this by the executive would allow the grants process to be released and run for 4 weeks during February. A cross-party members panel to be formed for March by the lead member, and the panel dates set with the salient information from the applications to score against the RDC business plan and the H&WB strategy priorities. To continue the current process and allow for a decision paper to come back to the executive group in April 2024 to include the results of the grants process for 24-25, provide an update on the new Essex model, agree RDC approach and funding allocation, and also provide full results and outcomes from the voluntary sector grants given out in 23-24, including a full year report of activity from RAVs. To support RAVs resilience in the interim with a transition payment of £10,000, which has been identified within the business case for the Ukraine grant monies. That's R1, R2, R3. I'll take votes in favour of the set R1 to R3, please. Okay. Okay, thank you. How many is that? 8. 8 in favour. I now have to ask anybody against. Any abstentions? Councillor Williams has said that. Those 3 recommendations are carried. Thank you. Oh, I should do that more often. Sounded like karate, didn't it? Okay, item 8, asset decisions. You have a report from Councillor Mrs. Wilson, who we know is absent due to illness, but we have Phoebe Barnes here, the Director of Assets and Investments, who has agreed to lead on the presentation of the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, upon reflection, I think I ought to declare an interest in the Arc Lane element of this report, having camped many times on the site with the Scouts, being involved with the Scouts still to some extent, being DBS checked by the Scouts, etc., and available to camp there. And I think I will not vote on that basis. I think it's wise.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. That will be minuted accordingly, and the fact that you've decided not to vote on that particular item.
Thank you, Chair. Members, in front of you this evening is 6 recommendations. Just to note, recommendation 6 is incorrect, and it should read to delegate authority to Director of Assets and Investments in consultation with lead member of Assets and Open Spaces to finalise the terms proposed in R1 through to R5. At the moment, it says R4. Apologies, I missed that.
Hold on a tick. When we get to that recommendation, I'll have to ask for an amendment from members.
No, it can just be proposed as amended.
Okay. So can you make it clear to me?
So in R6, the R4 needs to be replaced with R5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Simple error. Yeah.
Apologies for that.
Thank you.
There are 5 leases or licenses in front of you to be approved tonight. As highlighted in the report, the team have been working through some leases and licensing that have been overhanging, and we have just been aligning and kind of getting our house in order. This wouldn't usually come altogether at this point in time, but this is the time I've been able to bring this report forward, working with the lead member. So we have a lease of land to the South Arc Lane to the Scout Association for a period of 28 years, a lease of land and hut at Connaught Road in Rayleigh to the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association for a period of 25 years, a licence of office space and the meeting room at Mill Hall Arts and Events Centre to the Systems Advice Bureau for a period of 2 years, a licence at the Day Centre at Back Lane, Rochford, to the Citizen Advice Bureau for a period of 2 years, and a lease of the Day Centre at Back Lane to the Trustees of Old People's Welfare Community for a period of 7 years. The report highlights what the rentals are. Some are peppercorn, some are in £800 and some are higher, and obviously collectively over the years, one will, where is it? Sorry. The Air Cadet one will be over £50,000. All the leases, I would say, and licenses, they have break clauses in them. They have, in the leases, there's opportunity to reflect on the rental as well. Happy to take any questions on any specific one.
Thank you, Phoebe. Members, questions? Oh, there's one next to me. Councillor, yes, Mr. Newport.
Sorry, Chairman, do you mind if I get a glass of water?
Not at all.
Definitely not. We're going to wait for Michael to come back.
Yes, we're going to wait till the member returns to his seat. Thank you.
I think he should run.
We're still in session, Councillor Stanley. Thank you.
Hang on, Lisa wants, Councillor Mrs. Lisa Newport wants to.
Sorry, can you?
Emily's going to.
Want the heating off?
Want the heating off? Oh, excellent. Yes, what a good idea. Thank you. Okay. Again, we'll wait until the administration's done. Thank you, Emily. To resume,
Okay.
Councillor Mr. Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. Phoebe, can you explain, just in layman's terms, the difference between a lease and a license? And one of the recommendations R2, no, sorry, not R2, R3 about the Mill Hall. That license, can that license be changed if an operator came forward that needed that space as part of their operating model? Thanks.
Thank you. So a license is to used to kind of specify a specific area, so, and is usually for a short duration. A lease is for a fixed number of periods and is of exclusive occupation. So the question you've got regarding R2 is the R3, R3 is that the license is for the CAB to have use of the office, of a specific office space and the meeting room. They do not have exclusive rights to the Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre. Regarding your point around if an operator was to come forward, there is a break clause in there of 6 months, which would allow us the time to find them alternative accommodation, which is a reasonable amount of time for them to support them in finding alternative accommodation, move them out in order to an operator to come in.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members?
Chris.
Councillor Stanley?
Thank you, Chairman. Having read through best part of our assets, I just would like to ask the question of, do we know that the lease value that we've put on these assets, do we know that the renter will be able to afford the rents or the lease that we've got on there? And I'm considerably worried that we've got such a long term on 2 of them of 28 and 25 years. I'm particularly concerned with that because you're looking too far into the future to understand what is going to go on with those groups. That's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. If you could deal with that, thank you.
So obviously the proposals we have put forward have been agreed with who we have been negotiating the leases and licenses with, and we are comfortable that them organisations can pay the current proposals in the report. Regarding the long lease terms, with organisations like Scout groups and that, we give them long lease terms because it enables them to be able to apply for funding. For the Air Cadets one, they want to put a considerable amount of enhancements into the facility. That's why they've been granted a lease, so they have exclusive occupation. In some circumstances, grant applications won't award any grants if their lease is less than 25 years. So sometimes, organisations come forward so they can get their lease extended so that they can apply and get grant funding.
Do you want to come back?
Yes, please, Chairman. With that in mind then, obviously in 28 years from now, we don't know what our costs would be or what the costs would be. Would they be able to meet those? Is that the enlightened view of the licensee?
Yep, so within the leases, there is break clauses, there are rent reviews, and the reviews allow us to have them conversations, I think, once at 7 years. So to look at the market rent again, look at the rental value, and then also look at kind of the backdrop of them organisations of if they can afford a rent increase at that time or not. If they can't, then no rent increase is proposed, or a negotiated rent increase is proposed. But the leases are written so that we can they can serve notice, we can serve break clauses, but also rent reviews are periodical. We carry them out, and so we're not stuck in a lease for a long term that someone can't afford. There's opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little concerned about the percentage increase in the rents. It will sound to other people, they say our rent's gone up by 17 times. That sounds awful, although we know it's not. Why does the day centre not pay very much at all? And also the CAB, they don't pay much at all. They're quite a reasonably rich organisation, and I understand that we're also responsible for the upkeep of those buildings.
Yep, so my understanding with the CAB is we do have a partnership agreement with them, and it's most likely in the partnership agreement, I'd have to go away and check that we provide a facility for them to operate. When we award the peppercorn rent, we award peppercorn rent looking at the social value. So without them services, what they deliver to the organisation, the council would potentially look at having to deliver them services. So by awarding a peppercorn rent, then the reach of the social value, which is quantifiable, we don't have that at that point in time, is greater than what the market rent is at that point, what we can get for the site.
Yeah, thank you.
Phoebe, can you examine that question and circulate members with the position? Is it enshrined in an agreement, particularly with RABS? Was it the
Yeah,
CAB?
so yeah, we
The
can go
CAB
away.
and also with the day centre, if you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind. Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Councillor William asked my question. Thank you.
Councillor Mr Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm just touching back on what Councillor Williams said about the 17 times increment. Is this because those leases haven't been reviewed over that period? And going into the future, coming back to what Councillor Stanley said about the length of those leases, are these rents linked to any indexation, CPI, or anything? So we don't get into that position again where we see a large jump in rents. Thanks.
Yeah, you are correct. Some of the increases is due to the rents have been held over and we've not reviewed them, and therefore for an amount of time, and therefore the rents have increased after reviewing. So yes, getting our house in order now means that we're in a position where we can regularly review them, and they will be linked to inflation or to a rent revaluation, where we would get an independent valuation done on them at that time, which takes into consideration inflation and that. But that will be as part of the rent reviews as stated out in the leases.
Councillor Stanley. I've got you.
Just one other question, which hasn't been put down on any of the prices, and that is, do we, I don't know, so this is the question, do we charge VAT on those leases?
No, we'd only charge VAT on the leases if the buildings were had been opted to tax for VAT, and from my recollection, none of the buildings are opted to tax at the moment.
Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly then, on social value, which was mentioned, it is possible to give values for social value. I'm not saying do this for now, but in future, could we put the social value down then to show that the social value is what we think it is? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Any further questions, members? Right, there aren't any. I'm going to handle this slightly differently because of the declaration of interest. I'll take R1 first, and then I'll ask you whether you're prepared to take R2 to R6 together. Are you agreeable with that approach? Okay. In that case, I'll take R1 with a proposer and seconder, please. Councillor Newport, Councillor Reeves. I shall make sure I read these out because that's the right and proper way. R1, to lease the council-owned asset known as land to the south of Ark Lane, Hall Road, Rochford, to the Scout Association Trust Corporation for use as a scout unit and purposes ancillary thereto, and for the activities undertaken by the voluntary youth organisations for a period of 28 years. Those in favour, please. Right, that's 8. All right. Anybody against? Any vote against? Any abstention?
Sorry, could I just ask advice? Is it best I don't vote or abstain?
It essentially is the same conclusion, so it's fine for you to abstain.
1 abstention. Thank you. That R1 is carried. As it's your wish to take R2 to R6,
I thought one of them was being removed. No?
well,
Sorry.
Right, I'm putting R2 to R6 forward.
Sorry, Chair, can I just interrupt? Do we have to actually note there that R6 has been changed to?
No, I will read out the amended as proposed by Phoebe Barnes.
Okay, thank you.
I checked that before we commenced our questions and debate. Thank you. Right, I do have to read this out. I apologise for the sound of my own voice for a few minutes, but nevertheless, if it sends you to sleep, I shall wake you up for the next item. Thank you. Okay, R2, to lease the council-owned asset known as part of land and hut at Connaught Road, Rayleigh, with around 0.47 acres, aged red on the map annexed here to Appendix 2, to the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association for East Anglia, the tenant, for use as a training centre for Air Training Corps for a period of 25 years. R3, to license the council-owned asset known as part of office space and meeting room at the Mill Arts and Events Centre, Rayleigh, coloured red on the floor plan annexed here too as Appendix 3, to Rochford and Rayleigh Citizens Advice Bureau, the licensee, for use as a counselling and advice centre for a period of 2 years. R4, to license the council-owned asset known as part of day centre at Back Lane, Rochford, coloured blue on the map annexed here too as Appendix 4, to Rochford and Rayleigh Citizens Advice Bureau Limited, the licensee, for use as a counselling and advice centre for a period of 2 years. R5, to lease the council-owned asset known as part of day centre at Back Lane, Rochford, aged red on the map annexed here too is Appendix 5, to trustees of Old People's Welfare Committee for Rochford and District, the tenant, for use as a day centre for the elderly for a period of 7 years. R6, to delegate authority to the Director of Assets Investments in consultation with the lead member of Assets and Open Spaces to finalise the terms proposed in R1 through to R5 as outlined in this report. Do I have a proposer and seconder for each of those items? We've got Councillor Mr Newport, Councillor Mrs Newport. That makes it a family affair, so thank you. Members, I'll take votes in favour of the items R2 to R6, please. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. No votes against, so I'll take it as no further voting is required. Thank you, members. We now move to item 9, which is the 24-25 budget and 24-29 medium-term financial strategy report. I understand, Councillor Hoy, you're going to present to this item, and that there was circulated yesterday a lead member's recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. This is the proposed budget, draft budget for 24-25. The headline proposals are a council tax increase of 2.99%, which equates to an increase of 15 pence per week on Band D property. No cuts to services, no borrowing over the medium-term financial strategy, fees and charges generally rising with inflation, investment in the relocation of our offices and in Mill Hall. We can present a balanced budget for next year, as well as a balanced budget for 2025-26 and 2026-27, with no use of reserves to support those budgets. This demonstrates a sound, responsible approach to managing the council's finances, despite severe pressure on budgets as a result of inflation. As an overview, there is a great deal of uncertainty regarding the economic backdrop and government funding for the budget and MTFS. The MTFS continues the council policy of not borrowing. That does not mean that future borrowing is out of the question for the right projects, but not for this report. We can maintain our minimum level of working balances of 10% of net revenue expenditure as per council policy and acceptable to the Section 151 officer over the next 3 years. The table in paragraph 7.2 summarises budgets for 5 years. There are projected shortfalls in years 4 and 5. Whilst these shortfalls are of some concern, they are only predictions, and in the context of substantial uncertainty, that's how they should be treated. Despite this uncertainty, we nonetheless wish to highlight some actions planned over the medium term designed to generate income and reduce costs. These are set out in paragraph 6.5. The capital programme. We are presenting a 5-year programme that invests in the district and the services of that the council provides. But to avoid borrowing, we are using receipts from asset sales and earmarked reserves. Again, I would like to emphasise this does not preclude borrowing in future years. This is the budget as we see it today. The earmarked reserves that we use to fund the capital programme come from the revenue budget, sometimes building them up when we can to spend on investment. The amount of reserves available to fund the capital programme will become exhausted. Obviously, this has been recognised by limiting the programme over the 5 years. Whilst we have identified some specific schemes, a number of others will be subject to a value for money assessment starting in 24-25 to decide which should be prioritised. This is explained in paragraph 13.4. So as I've explained, there's very little room for manoeuvre. We continue to be as efficient as possible, but there are ongoing cost increases and pressure on income. Any spare funding will be used to support investment in assets and services. The overall position is delicate. Any significant unfunded costs could promote or prompt the need to reduce services or to borrow. If the council tax increase was reduced by 1%, it would cost £450,000 over the MTFS period and £90,000 every year thereafter. Our earmarked reserves are set out in paragraph 15.9. They demonstrate how reserves are used to fund the capital programme. At the start of this year, they stood at £13.3 million, but are projected to fall to just below £5 million at the end of next year. The use of these reserves is planned, and they are not being used to fund ongoing expenditure, only one-off costs. But their projected reduction does highlight how this council, along with most other councils across the country, is having to utilise reserves to sustain services. I would just like to point out the report does refer to funding from the UK SPF fund. I'd just like to say the report on the UK SPF fund is going to the executive on the 8th of February, so we are assuming that there's assumptions made that that will be approved in this report. On the 8th of February, I'm expecting that to be approved, hopefully so. I'd just like to say that the process from this point is as follows. This executive meeting will discuss and approve its budget and MTFS proposals for full council on the 20th of February. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee will scrutinise these proposals on the 1st of February, making any recommendations to the executive. The executive will meet again on the 8th of February to consider these recommendations and finalise its proposed budget MTFS to the council. For tonight, I propose that the 5 recommendations related to the budget MTFS be put to full council on the 20th of February. For those, I think I've used a bit of jargon in there, but for those who don't know, MTFS stands for Medium Term Financial Strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. I'd just like to point out that the only recommendation in front of us this evening is R1, which is on the supplemental sheet. And just to focus your minds, I'm not asking it to be voted upon. The recommendation is that the draft budget report be submitted to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for review. It does not include any of R1 to R5 included in the draft report. Thank you. Mr. Willis.
Thank you, Chair. You made the point that I was about to make to supplement what Councillor Hoy said.
In that case, my training is complete. Thank you. Members, you're welcome to ask questions of Councillor Hoy and Mr. Willis. Councillor Gooding, Councillor Cripps, Councillor Stanley. Yeah, okay, let's go.
Thank you for the report that you've explained so far. Can I just ask for some clarification on 13.5, page 9.12? The programme includes the 1.4 million allocation for Rochford District Council office relocation. I just want clarification. Is that just a straight relocation from South Street to the Civic Suite? Because it doesn't include any temporary accommodation.
Councillor Gooding, can I remind you that matters, you're referring to matters that are in exempt.
Okay.
You cannot continue to speak of those in open session. Thank you very much.
Thank
Would you like to reconsider your question, please?
How can I reword it? Can I ask for? I just need a breakdown of what the 1.4 million allocation is for. Is that possible?
Ms. Willis, can you help?
I hope so, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gooding. All I can say at the moment is it's an allocation, which is true of a number of items within the capital programme. We need to make our best estimates of various investment items within the capital programme over 5 years. And sometimes we have very little detail to go on. And sometimes there are business cases required in order to decide, even if certain things go ahead, certainly in what form they go ahead, when there is so much uncertainty. And that is true of the 1.4 million that's in the programme. So my answer is no, there is no breakdown because we haven't worked that out yet. What the 1.4 million represents is the value of capital receipts that will be generated, which is shown in the appendix.
Thank you.
Councillor Cripps, thank you. Before we do continue, will members take particular care over not referring to matters in exempt? If you do so, I'm afraid after this warning, there may be difficulties. So thank you.
My point is for Tim. It's quite a broad point as opposed to specifics. Your report, quite rightly, regularly through it, issues warnings and cautions about the fragility of the estimate, government indecision, inflation, etc., etc., etc. And then at the end, towards the back end, section 17 conclusions, you explain some of the measures we're taking to cope with it and so on. And 17.1, paragraph 17.1, the last sentence ends with, these factors could jeopardise the council's sustainable financial position without continued budgetary vigilance alongside the delivery of the council's priorities. So my question to you, Tim, is would you recommend, given the fragility of the situation, that we introduce perhaps a quarterly health check on the essential elements of the document, that being revenue, capital and reserves, so that we are actually monitoring it enough to be aware of any going wrong, of course, because of these pressures that you identified. So it's a question, is it time that we should start to monitor this more clearly to control it? Thank you.
Mr. Willis, I think I know what you're going to say.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd point out to councillors that there's a section 14 in this report, which is in any budget report for any local authority. The section 25 statement, which is the assurance statement by the statutory finance officer, which provides the assurance that the estimates that the council that have in front of them are robust, and that reserves are adequate for determining the level of the budget for next year and council tax, which offers some of that assurance, I think, that you're seeking. The other thing I would say is there are certain statutory officers that have a statutory obligation to the law to protect certain things for every council, and as you know, one of those is the Section 151 officer, the post that I'm covering for at the moment. And it's essential that the person in that post lives and breathes exactly those concerns that you raise on a daily basis, never mind quarterly. So if there was any question that it was likely that the section that you referred to in the conclusion, that there was potential for any accounts to be jeopardised and the financial sustainability of the council were to be undermined, then that will be a matter that I bring before, certainly, first of all, the other statutory officers, and then this executive and the full council, to warn of that very fact. And I'm obligated statutorily to do so. So that would be the protection that I would suggest that you have against those sorts of scenarios. Ultimately, of course, it's a Section 114, but that will be a last resort, and we're certainly a long way. We're nowhere near that right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Councillor Cripps, you have a return?
Yes, please. Tim, in no way was I insinuating that you're not doing the officer's duty. It's just that there seem to be so many risks which are not within our control that this feels like it's more likely to be a problem given the state of the budget situation. So I'm encouraged that you monitor it daily and are obliged to bring it to our notice should it go anywhere near being a problem. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Cripps. Was it, who was next?
Chris?
Councillor Stanley?
Thank you, Chairman. Taking it a little bit further on from Councillor Cripps, who's put it quite eloquently, on 9.13, 14.6, 14.7, where it is noted that we are facing challenging times and pressures and increased demand in the future. And this is really the MTFS, which is the medium term. In 5 years from now, can he say, and which he has done here, is saying, I'm satisfied that the council has sufficient reserves and balances to operate over this medium term? Have we got exactly that in, say, in 5 years' time? Would we have the reserves for emergencies of flooding and with climate change and what we have to deal with as a council? Would we have those reserves there for not only of what we're dealing with at this present time, but for climate change in the future? We all know that Rayleigh is really a bowl for water and the way it transfers down from the town centre. And I just wonder if we have got those reserves in place for that sort of eventuality.
In the first case, Councillor Stanley, I must remind you that Rochester District Council is not the flood authority. So you're referring to floods in particular. So I need to mention that to you, as I think you know. But Mr. Willis, if you could address the general approach to that question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Stanley. I'll answer this in quite a sort of a narrow financial way. The table on it's page 9.8 paragraph 7.2, sets out the sort of 5-year position of reserves, and it's all a bit small, I'm afraid, but there's a row there just below the second green bar, which is general fund contribution or withdrawal, and it's 00, and then it's 0.004, so £4,000 for the next 3 years. That shows that we've got a balanced budget for the next 3 years. Our projected expenditure equals our projected income. But then there's 880,000 and then 1.2 million, 1.278 million in the following 2 years, which is a shortfall. It's a budget gap, a deficit, what we're going to call it. So as was mentioned by Councillor Hoy in his introduction, we know a little about 24-25 next financial year. We know very little beyond that. So these are projections into the relatively long term, 5 years, which is a longer term, medium term financial strategy that this council has traditionally considered. It's been 3 or 4 years, 5 years is exceptionally long. So the amount of uncertainty there is substantial. Underlying your question, I think, is if we've got projections that are deficits, are we doing something about it to avoid it? And the answer to that is, first of all, the amount of uncertainty means that it would be a bit premature to do something about it now. That's something that might happen or might not in 5 years' time. But more seriously, it's if we were to take action now to address something that may or may not happen in 5 years, you could end up stopping services, making redundancies, taking action to withdraw investment when you didn't need to. As the years passed, you would realize that you didn't need to because we got the predictions wrong. So it's a balance to be struck between knowing whether or not in this scenario, which over the next 5 years, we do have deficits in years 4 and 5, knowing that, should we take action now or not? And my response to that is, we needn't take action now. Having 3 years worth of a balanced budget is very good, actually, in the current environment, financial environment. But we do suggest that you commit to various planned actions over the medium term to start considering ways in which you will address those things. And some of those are set out in the report. But in a very narrow financial sense, if we've got £880,000 that we need to fund in year 4 and of the 5-year MTFS, and another 1.278 million in year 5, you will see at the bottom, the row below that is the general fund balance. That's our sort of the thing that we try and maintain at 10% of net revenue expenditure. So that's the cash, that's sort of the last resort cash that we draw upon. Well, that goes negative at the end of 5 years. It means we've got 800,000 less than we've got in it. So that can't be the case. However, in that worst case scenario, if we took no action to address those deficits as they approached over the years, and that actually happened, we still have earmarked reserves. Now, some of those earmarked reserves are what they say. They're earmarked for something specific, and we might need them for those specific things. But some of them are provisions for certain circumstances. And those ones could be called upon, in fact, would be called upon to help bridge that gap in that scenario. We would still have sufficient reserves over the 5 years, even if those deficits happened in years 4 and 5. So that ultimately gives you the protection that we're not going to run out of reserves based on these projections.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Any further questions, members? He looks around. No. In which case, I'm going to, on your behalf and on behalf of the committee, R1, the recommendation is that the draft budget report...
Chairman, wouldn't it be more appropriate as it's my report for me to propose?
No, I'll make it from the chair, and I will ask proposer and seconder. I wish to make absolutely clear what we're actually putting forward. R1, that the draft budget report be submitted to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for review. Have we got a proposer and seconder, please?
I misunderstood you, Chairman. I will propose it.
Proposed by Councillor Hoy, seconded by Councillor Eaves. Thank you. I'll now take votes in favour of the recommendation, please. Can you show a hand? Nice and high, so I can see it. We can all see it. Yes, that is unanimous. So thank you very much. I believe we've now reached the end of the agendaed meeting. So I will thank you very much for attending. I would also like to thank all the officers who have come this evening to assist the committee in making the decisions that have been put forward in the recommendations. Thank you very much indeed. I close the meeting at 8:39, something like that. You're always my arbiter.